Good tidings, friends, and welcome to one of what will hopefully be many more lore episodes on our channel. Today we are here to talk about the bullshittery that is the Xehanort timeline. For those of you who are unaware, there's been some confusion as to the order of which certain Norts happen in the timeline of Kingdom Hearts. Now, not the obvious ones like Xemnas and Ansem or Old Man Nort. We're talking specifically about the new tiny Scala Xehanort we see playing chess with Ericus in various scenes in Kingdom Hearts 3, and Young Xehanort, Baby Nort as we know him, the time-traveling asshole. Many people may not have given this much thought, as one of these boys is clearly younger than the other one. However, if you actually read various segments of the secret reports and piece together the timeline, the game would actually have us believe that this boy is younger than this boy. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the ramifications of this and different potential timelines that could explain this away. To start, we're going to look at the timeline the game actually wants us to believe. Basically, regardless of the apparent ages of the Norts, we see what the game is sort of telling us. To start, we're going to look at the evidence in Dream Drop Distance, where Young Xehanort is explaining to Sora his experiences and basic timeline. We see a weird meta flashback where they're watching him being approached by Ansem as Mr. Robe Guy, where he is giving him the ability to travel through time, and ultimately the final push to leave his island and explore the worlds. This is explained as him getting his time-traveling powers, him going into the future, doing all of the timey-wimey Baby Nort stuff, and coming back to the past, those memories having been imprinted on his heart, even though he cannot consciously remember them or recall them. Those memories, despite the fact that he cannot actually remember or recall them, are what gives him the final push to leave the island and explore other worlds. This is backed up by some things in the secret reports, that I can read now. Until a few short days ago, I'd known only my own world, a speck of land surrounded by the sea. But how I dreamed of, yearned for the world beyond, and, granted guidance from the future, I left that nest behind. As I treaded the path to my master's side, I came in contact with darkness in many forms. I knew even then by instinct, terrifying as the power was, it could be harnessed, mastered. Well, one, this is potentially implying that Xehanort saw all sorts of shit before he got to Scala and Caelum, but two, also, the darkness he came in contact with might actually be, memories of the tail end of him returning to his time and stuff like that. It's unclear. We don't know about that. But this also presents the basic timeline of the time traveling happening beforehand, and then him going to Scala. The biggest kicker is, and I have it right over here, this Ultimania guide, which is not the Kingdom Hearts 3 Ultimania, it is I believe it came out with around the time of 1.5 and 2.5 or 2.8. This Ultimania has this lovely chart in the back, which is the Xehanort timeline chart. Yeah. It has a broken down of all of the Norts and how they relate to each other, and this lovely guide over here of all of the events of Xehanort. Now, this one is in Japanese, but you can find fully translated ones on the internet. It outright states that Xehanort time-traveled from his island when he met Ansem at that point, before he ever left and met Ericus. Very specifically, that bullet is right, after the sideways time travel arrow that loops back into that personal timeline for him. So yeah, the problem with this is, of course, that Nomura has outright stated that Young Xehanort, being the time travel-y one as we know him, is between the age of 18 and 20. Now, as we see, the Xehanort in Scala and Caelum is small, has a higher-pitched voice, and clearly looks younger than both this and the other Xehanort. We have timeline option potential number 2. This would somewhat disregard some of the evidence that we saw, ignoring this, which is the most definitive, hardline, spelled-out evidence that Xehanort did not time travel when he was in Scala, but before he got to Scala, we can present a new alternative timeline. So imagine another timeline basically saying that Xehanort didn't time travel until after he met Ericus and had been training for a couple of years. This would make sense because when you fight him, he's a badass and kicks your ass a lot, so him having had some practice with a Keyblade would make sense. Yeah. There are two options to this timeline. One, when he meets Ansem, he gets the ability to travel through time and kind of is motivated to leave the island, and he isn't called upon or yanked out of his timeline until he has been on Scala training for a couple of years, basically. This would mean that Xehanort left the island when he was younger, and while we do see an older Xehanort in that scene in Dream Drop Distance, there is a lot of evidence supporting that that is actually not at all representative of what Xehanort actually looked like in that scene, and has everything to do with the disc cartridge limitations of the original Dream Drop Distance game, which was on a handheld. We can see this in BBS, where they use the same models for Ventus even when he's supposed to be like 12, in a flashback that takes place 3 years prior, when he's getting split in half and Vanitas is born. And we can see that in Key, where Ven is supposed to be around that age. He does look different because they had the opportunity to make him look different, but having two different models is not really an option when you have things. It's also why they didn't have capes. Fun fact, Xehanort even uses the same character model as Isa from Kingdom Hearts 2, with his hood up for the amount of, like, trying to save on extra things that they were doing in Dream Drop Distance. We can kind of use that little bit of, ignoring that as a solid, valid piece of evidence, the idea that Xehanort was younger when he left the island and went forward. Alternatively, he also could have met Ansem twice. He could have met Ansem, gone off to Scala ad Caelum after being told about the outside world to train for a while, and then, say, visited Destiny Islands in a poetic irony kind of way while out on his Mark of Mastery exam, met Ansem again, and at that point gone and done the time travel and come back. One point that I haven't mentioned that you may be wondering about, that is a big sticky widget in the Xehanort timeline shenanigans, is the yellow eyes. Scala ad Caelum Xehanort, as you've seen, has the silver-gray eyes, whereas our asshole baby Nort has the lovely golden darkness eyes. This may be when he returns to his time, the amount of darkness he retains and those powers are lost, ergo his eyes return to the normal silver color, which is why I'm not worrying too much about that as a piece of evidence in general. So before the DLC trailer came out, we might have been able to consider the yellow eyes a point in the category for baby Nort having not time traveled until after he'd gotten to Scala. However, the scene we see in that DLC trailer throws all sorts of wrenches into various things for all of this. He is very clearly, during that trailer, at the tail end of his Mark of Mastery exam, and he still has the silver eyes. So, again, that's another point towards the time travel. He had the yellow eyes because he was all full of that darkness and Master Nort's power, not because he had gotten those yellow eyes yet himself. One could argue that this means that Xehanort didn't time travel until after that scene we saw, but that's pretty unlikely, again, because of the whole Ansem being the one who gave him the time-traveling powers thing. Of course, we have the lovely conversation with our friend, probably Mom and/or Lushu, so who knows? Point being, that sticky wicket, we're not really going to consider the yellow eyes too much as one or the other. Basically, we are looking at two different options. One where the physical age of Xehanort is misrepresented in Dream Drop Distance. He left the island as a 15-year-old, went to Scala, trained, and then time-traveled some point after that when he was roughly 18 or 20, or the one where he didn't leave the island until he was 18 or 20, met Ansem, time-traveled, came back, and then went to Scala, and somehow that tiny child, youth in black, is actually older than baby Nort. I am now actually going to present a third option. That's going to sound a little kooky, but bear with me. Basically, the evidence shown is insisting that young Xehanort has to happen after the time-traveling young Xehanort. So who's to say it had to happen immediately after? At the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, we see Ericus and Xehanort both sort of magically age down like fucking Force ghosts, and particle effect off into gay heaven. The idea for this theory is, who's to say that these two versions of Ericus and Xehanort aren't actually post-KH3 entirely? That they would be realm of sleep versions of these characters existing in whatever the fuck Scala ad Caelum is. Let's remember that we don't know a lot about Scala ad Caelum, or that it even is a normal functioning world. It's described as a nexus, and that's pretty weird. We also only get to it by going through a Realm of Sleep portal through Xehanort, which is another big red flag as to the nature of that world. The chess game is like some magical metaphysical thing happening that mirrors the exact events of the first several games, which is another point in the something fishy going on. Now, mind you, I am aware of the fact that much of the dialogue exchanged between Ericus and Xehanort doesn't quite seem to match up with this. Not that it's entirely contrary, but they are talking as though they are students and making references to their learning the Keyblade. One comment about a prospective Keyblade master should know this, stuff like that. But I personally am of the opinion that not all of it is definitive enough to necessarily pin this as not just an old man making a shitty joke because they're stuck in younger bodies, or the idea that if they are stuck in the realm of sleep, that maybe they don't actually fully remember everything that happened before, or something along those lines. It's Kingdom Hearts. I don't like playing the amnesia card because sometimes it feels lazy, but it's a Square Enix game, and it does get played a lot. So, you know. Also a reminder that the Realm of Sleep when Sora and Riku visit also both are stuck in 15-year-old versions of themselves. So that is another point towards that being a thing. If you're unsatisfied with the idea that it happened after Kingdom Hearts 3 entirely, I offer a fourth alternative. Kingdom Hearts 3 introduced the concept of world lines. It could be entirely possible that the Ericus and Xehanort that we're seeing are from an alternate world line or timeline that is completely different from the one timed into the time loop that Young Xehanort is a part of. This could be an entirely different world line, one from the Dandelion's world line, which is separate from the one that the main games are in, or something else entirely, where perhaps Xehanort doesn't become the villain, or something else happens. This could be a world line where Xehanort does leave the islands at a younger age, and lives on Scala and trains with Ericus during that time, and the reason that they're playing a chess game is because it's not indicative of the fate of the world in their time, but of one in another timeline, which is, as per the normal rule of sci-fi, a little bit more allowed. That's not a hard and fast rule, that's more of a general guideline of how sci-fi things are written, mind you, but, you know, it's a point in that column. Of course, all of the talk about fate and more than light that meets the eye, and on this world shall darkness prevail and light expire, does hint more towards the original timeline, so, yeah. I present to you these four possible options. This video isn't here to talk about what's definitively right or wrong, but rather to equally explore four different possibilities based off of the evidence that we have gathered. As a man of science, I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. I'm here to present to you these different options that all have their different pros and cons, all have evidence for and against them. Right now, to me personally, I think all of these are equally viable, and we simply don't have enough information quite yet to determine what is the actual case for Xehanort's timeline. I do believe after that DLC comes out, we'll be probably getting our answer, because Nomura, well, I think I'm going to shelf the, all this backstory I have written for Xehanort about how he fell to darkness and stuff, because then the Dark Seeker saga wouldn't end. Also, Nomura, Baby Nort talking to the Master of Masters in this DLC trailer, am I right? Yeah. Which of the Xehanort timelines do you think is the most likely? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know if you think one of the four timelines is viable, or if you have your own potential answer to the Xehanort timeline conundrum. We stream every Wednesday at 8. Right now we're playing Kingdom Hearts 2, while we analyze the lore through the lens of things that we now know from Kingdom Hearts 3. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out our Ko-fi, Patreon, and Discord server down in the description below, and remember, save your tears, because we'll be back.
Xemnas wants you for Seekers of Darkness. Subscribe now and become a vessel today.